So let's jump right in. Guys, welcome to the official launch of our community. Thank you all for, first of all, joining the community and trusting us enough to want to join our community. So we really hope we can make it a place where we can all learn together, grow together, and where each one of us actually can become an evangelist for creating well-crafted software. So I want to take a couple of minutes to talk about why we started this community, and then we'll dive into this talk with Sandro and Sapan. But the idea basically is that over the last 10 years, I've built teams in India for companies in the US. And while there's always been a lot of excitement about the cost benefit that's related to teams in India, there has also been a resistance around quality, and that's been very, very tangible over the years. Whoever you talk to, whether that is managers or whether that's also team members that you work with closely, there's always this mindset that if you're working with people in India, you're going to get bad quality, right? So there's this almost a stigma associated with this word outsourcing, and we're kind of bearing the brunt of it. So I've always had this side agenda, which is to prove to the world that India can do really good quality work, and that we're not just cheap labor. And a large part of doing that is to get Indian software professionals access to the right tools, to the right techniques, and helping them meet world leaders like Sandro. So through this community, we're hoping to do just that. So welcome again, and I hope this community helps you all um, over time. So with that, we can jump into our talk today. So today we're going to be talking about software craftsmanship, and we'll talk about why, as software professionals, we must continue to always learn the craft, why we must hone our craft, and how we can help others get better at their craft. There are a lot of people in India and also all over the world who, to quote Sandro's company, Codurance, have craft at heart. And there's a lot we can learn from these people. And we have two such people with us today. So welcome Sapan. Sapan Parikh is the VP of Engineering at eClinicalWorks. It's a US-based company that builds healthcare products. And Sapan has been instrumental in building and leading their engineering team in Ahmedabad over the last 10 years. And welcome Sandro. Sandro Mancuso, as you all probably already know, is the co-founder of Codurance. Codurance is a services company. And not only do they build software for their clients, but they also help train teams and help drive the adoption of Agile within the organizations that they work with. Apart from that, Sandro has also authored a really amazing book. It's called The Software Craftsman, and it's highly, highly recommended. And he was the founder of the London Software Craftsmanship Community, which he founded 10 years back. It now has more than 5,000 members, and it's still a very thriving community. So we're really excited to have you here, Sandro. Thanks for joining us. And with that, we can jump right in. Sandro, do you want to maybe take 15 to 20 minutes to talk about software craftsmanship and why it's important, and maybe we can get started with that.
Yes, thank you, Rushali. So first of all, thank you for inviting me. I would like to say that even before I start, that I'm extremely happy to see another software craftsmanship community starting in India. So I really resonate what you were saying about your goals with the India, with the community in India. For those of you that might not know, I come from Brazil myself. So Brazil has a similar stigma as Rushali was saying, also like as a outsourced place, cheaper labor and things like that. And I think that we can do a lot to show to the world that we know how to build software well, right? So I'm very happy to see that this is a great goal for this community to have. So before we jump in, what we are going to do, I'm going to try to explain to all of you that might be new to software craftsmanship. So what it is, where it came from, so why is needed. So I'll tell you a little bit of a history, but I'll try to keep it short, like 15 minutes or so, and then we're going to have a chat about it. Okay, so let me
that sounds good. And Okay. And Sandro, while you're sharing your screen, I just wanted everyone to know that, guys, if you have questions along the way, please use the Q&A box and keep them coming. We can start answering questions as and when they come in. And we also have time at the end of the session to answer more questions. So please feel free to keep asking as many questions as you have.
So, craftsmanship. So, what is it about and why do we need that? So, before I talk about craftsmanship, I need to tell you a little bit of history. Uh, so, back in late 90s, I started my career in 1995, 1996. That's when I started professionally. So that was the day, late 90s is when we were gradually moving away from waterfall. Waterfall was still big, this whole plan up front. I believe that many of you can relate to that because we still use today these large plans up front, 5 years and everything else. But in the late 90s is when a lot of people were already suggesting new ways of developing software, mainly iterative software development. Some of you that are old enough like me probably will remember like rational unified process, for example, or RUP. So, and there were many other things, but there was this group of people defending many different ideas about iterative software development. So then in 2001, a group of people. So that was led by three guys that you might recognize the name. So one of them is Uncle Bob or Robert C. Martin, Alistair Colburn, and Martin Fowler. So those three guys, they had an idea of bringing a few people together that they were defending a more iterative way of working, more flexible way of working. So they were all how can I say, they were all proposing different ways of working. So they said, like, why don't we bring all those people together? So they combined their lists. They invited 25 people. Out of 25, 17 accepted the invitation, and they went to a ski resort in Utah called Snowbird precisely 20 years ago. So I think that it was 20 years like the past weekend. I think that Alistair Colburn was actually in Snowbird a few days ago, and he took a picture of the Agile plate that they have in there. So anyway, so they went to these ski resorts. There was a lot of very interesting people in there. So they had Uncle Bob, Martin Fowler, Alistair Colburn, but they also had Ron Jeffries, they had Andy Thomas and Dave Hunt, that were the representatives of pragmatic programmers. So this is another great book that if you want to read, it's 22 years old now, but still a very relevant book. There were some Kent Schraber, Jeff Sutherland, that are the creators of Scrum. You had like Kent Beck, Chad Hendricks, Ward Cunningham. So those were the guys that were proponents for extreme programming, and quite a few other people. So all of those people, those 17 people, they represented about 6 to 7 methodologies like extreme programming, pragmatic programming, then feature-driven development, Crystal, FDM. So there was quite a lot of different methodologies. So one thing that is important to say is that Agile is not a thing. Agile is not a methodology. Agile is not about Scrum meetings and iterations. So Agile is an umbrella of a series of methodologies, right? So, and each one of those methodologies, they have practices as well. Some of the methodologies, for example, one that is more process oriented is Scrum, and that can be used even outside the software industry. And there are some very technical methodologies that is extreme programming, right? So anyway, so those people, those 17 people together, they started talking about their methodologies, the way that they thought that software should be built, and they came up with a consensus. They came up with what is core to all of those methodologies, and they came up with this manifesto that you are looking at the screen, which back then was revolutionary, right? So coming from waterfall, I was working in Brazil back then, like we had software factories. I don't know if some of you may relate to the term, but It's software factory. We just receive a pile of requirements just to build, right? So this was revolutionary, because what Agile was trying to say is like, hey, developers need to play a more important role in the software development cycle. They need to be discussing requirements, shaping the software, not just taking the requirement and coding. So people like myself, I became extremely excited about that, but massively excited. And so then I moved to London in 2004, and London at that time, so that was already 3 years in of the Agile. So Agile was exploding across the world. Agile has a very big appeal because the name itself is amazing, if you think about it, right? For example, I don't think that was intentional, but for example, if you call something Agile, you cannot reject that as a company. Because if you are a company and your competitor is saying, hey, we are Agile, what does make you if you are not agile? Slow? What? Rigid? So agile had a massive appeal, mainly for business, for managers and stuff, because hey, we want to do things faster, right? So that business appeal, that management appeal, was amazing. So it took the world by storm. But then there was also a side effect. So in here, what we say is that individuals and interactions over process and tools, because in the past, in the waterfall model, or even in the unified process, there was very heavy on tools and processes. And Agile was saying, look, this is all about the individuals and the interactions. But if you see what happened after a few years with Agile, this was a blessing and a curse at the same time. So Scrum became far more popular than any other Agile methodology. This was good because this helped to disseminate Agile across the world and had this business appeal. But other more technical disciplines had less appeal, right? So then that family, those 17 people, will also start breaking, right? So because they had different views to the future, and Agile gradually became more about process, adopting Scrum, doing stand-ups and following these kind of things, right? So, but the technical excellence didn't come along the adoption of Scrum. So this is what leads to what I call Agile hangover. So what happened was a lot of companies, they adopted Agile, but they adopted the process side of Agile, right? So then what they did, they took some project managers and they transformed them in product owners or agile coaches and stuff like that. So basically they just found a different way of managing people, but they didn't unite the developers and testers and production services. They didn't bring everyone together. So then they were just building the same, they were managing software in a different way, but with the same engineering techniques and with the same split between managers or business and technology. So that's what I said, that the only difference was that they were building the same sheet software, but incrementally. So you could see the pile increasing every 2 weeks. That was the only difference, right? So, and there's no excuse anymore, because if you think about it, we are 20 years into Agile and we are still creating software that is not great. So in my view, like if you look back at the early days, so what is core to Agile, all these 6-7 methodologies, is fast feedback loop. So how do I define Agile? So for me, it's all about fast feedback loop, inspect and adapt, right? That's what it is. That's how I summarize. Fast feedback loop, learn faster, adapt faster. That is what it is. And you can do that at all levels. And I'm not saying that Scrum is bad. On the contrary, like we actually work in the Scrum fashion. Most of our teams at Codurance follow Scrum as a process because it gives us a fast feedback loop on what we are building on the business side, on the features that we are building, getting the feedback and stuff. But we need the technical feedback as well on the quality of our code. So you need to combine a lot of techniques and methodologies so that you have fast feedback at all levels, including on the technical side. Right. So going back a little bit, back again in history. So around early 2000, like 2005 and 6, people like myself that were extremely excited about Agile became a bit disappointed because we felt that we said, look, this was a developers movement and now it's slipping away. right? So it's being taken over, like management and developers are still in the same place that they were before. So we were very disappointed, but I was not the only one disappointed. Like even Uncle Bob, the guy that helped to create Agile, was disappointed. So then the working software from the Agile manifesto was still not happening, right? So then there is a joke that we have internally saying like, because the developers start rejecting Agile. That's what happened to me, right? We start getting upset. And then we had a joke like, is it our developers, for example, the Agile conferences, like a lot of developers didn't want to go anymore. Just managers would go. People that wanted to be Scrum Masters or product owners and stuff, but the developers themselves didn't see themselves as part of that group anymore. And then there was this joke like, are the developers moving away from Agile, or is it Agile that is moving away from developers? And in my view, I think it's both, right? So they are just breaking apart. So, and that was a shame, but that created a reaction. So in 2008, Uncle Bob and a group in Chicago decided to try to restore that balance. And that's how craftsmanship comes into play. So craftsmanship was an anti-culture. It is a reaction to the path that Agile took. It was not necessarily against Agile as a whole, but was trying to bring back the technical aspect of Agile, the software development aspect of Agile back. But because Agile took a detour more on the management side, that message in the early days in 2008, and then a little bit in 2009, when I got involved, because we were kind of an anti-culture, we had to come in with a very strong message. So, for example, if you go back and see some of the things that I said and wrote about 10 years ago, you would see a very anti-Agile attitude, because we were trying to counter that balance. Like the needle had gone towards one side, so we had to try to bring the needle back, right? So we had to have a strong message. And craftsmanship was exactly that, right? So then a new manifesto was created. So then, and what was a bit provocative as well, because it created on top of the Agile manifesto. So I say like, we don't want just working software. As the Agile manifesto said, what we want is well-crafted software, right? So it's more than just working software. All the legacy system, all that kind of horrible systems that we need to deal with, they are all working software. It's just not very nice to work with them, right? So what we want is well-crafted. And what we mean by that? Well, code that we are not scared to change, that you can press a button and know if it works, right? Code that there is a pleasure to work with, right? So that we are always in control. We never hit our debug button, right? So imagine like working without ever using your debugger, right? How amazing that would be. When I started my career, part of the interview process was if you knew how to debug. Look how crazy is that, right? So this is how bad the systems were. We don't want that anymore, right? So I want to press a button. I want to be able to read my code like a pros. So this is what we mean by well-crafted. So also, we don't only want to respond to change, as the Agile Manifesto said, because also that led us to keep putting the pressure. Like, okay, just hack something. We want to steadily adding value. So like, look, we need to make sure that every change that we make, we are not only adding business capabilities to our systems, but we are also evolving its architecture, its technical structure, so that we can keep building on top of it. But we do that gradually, right? So then there is also a community of professional, which is a thing that I really like. So this is quite a deviation from the Agile manifesto. The Agile talks about individual interactions more on the company aspect, like in the working environment, where craftsmanship took it outside. For example, this community here that you are starting today is a great example of that. So the craftsmanship brought a wider responsibility to developers to say, look, it's our job. If you want to change this, we cannot rely on other people or depend on other people to change it for us. We cannot be sitting out in our chair crying, so oh, the world is unfair, I'm a poor developer, no one listens to me, and blah, blah, blah. So we should take control. And that means that we should create a community of professionals, share our practices, show that we have a place at the table, right? So, and that's what the craftsmanship tries to say. And then one that I like a lot is the relationship with our customers. That we talk about this productive partnership, and productive partnership for me is really important here, because productive partnership, when you unpack what that last value is, it talks about your relationship with who pays for your work, right? It doesn't matter if you are a permanent employee, a consultant, a contractor. The way that you work and the way you get paid is not relevant in here, right? But the important thing here is like you are providing a service. You as a developer, you are a professional. You are paid to do a job. So understanding that is very important. So you might think that you might not even know, but you are already running a company. You yourself, you are a company. You are a person that offers service, and someone pays for your service. So that understanding is really important for us to talk about you owning your career, but also respecting your customer, making sure that you are offering your customer a great service because you are a professional. Right, so this is what we talk about. That I will leave to the questions, because we probably will expand a little bit on that one. But this is where the professionalism will come from, right? That we talked so much in software craftsmanship. So there are many different. I gave a few definitions in my book, but for example, one that I liked, again because of the context when I wrote the book, so is to putting responsibility, professionalism, pragmatism back and pride back into software development, right? So. But if I had to summarize, would be professionalism. That's how I see the mindset of software craftsmanship as is about we as developers being professional, behaving like professionals. Just to give you a sense of scale, I don't want to take all the time in this talk. In 2009, last time that I actually took a snapshot of all the communities, we had more than 27,000 developers across the world that signed the manifesto, but we had also like tons of communities. As you can see, like the software craftsmanship communities back in 2009 were spread in 53 countries, 210 cities, right? So thousands of members, hundreds of thousands members, and this is just from meetup.com. This I got from meetup.com. I don't know exactly other communities that are outside Meetup, but that's what I could find. So what craftsmanship helps to do, I just want to make sure that at the beginning, we had to criticize Agile to make a point, right? But this is not how we feel anymore. And like, it's very, very important to say that over time, craftsmanship helped to restore some balance. Right, craftsmanship, as I showed in the diagrams, like it became widely adopted, not as widely adopted as Agile. Agile is still way bigger, but movements like Agile, Lean, software craftsmanship, and more lately DevOps. So these movements that really change the mindset. Each one of those four, let's say, I like to talk about those four because I think they are the most important. So Lean, Agile, craftsmanship, and DevOps. They all contribute to business agility. They just operate at different levels, where Lean for me is a more organizational level, Agile more at the project level, team level, and stuff. Although there is a blurred line among all of them, right? So even Lean and Agile, there's a blurred line, but craftsmanship is more on the technical excellence that also has a blurred line with Agile, and DevOps the same thing, right? So it is a different type of technical excellence that we focus on DevOps, and a different type of alignment with the operations and production services. But all of them are after a quick feedback loop at different areas of the organization, and they all play together, right? So for me, where we are today is in a healthier place between Agile craftsmanship. So this is the context that I wanted to share. I will stop sharing my screen now because this is just like some very quick history of craftsmanship or what it is, so that we can have more a wider debate now.
Talking of debate, Sandro, I think one of the things you talked about this developers being driven away from agile because how process oriented it became, right? On the flip side, software craftsmanship seems to be something that is technical in nature. So if agile drove developers away, do you think it'll happen that software craftsmanship may drive managers away? Are these two mutually exclusive things? Because in software craftsmanship, if we are going to talk about, let's say, CI/CD or TDD or pair programming, would managers like say, hey, I'm going to go to my agile conference, you go to your software craftsmanship conference, and we don't have to look, see eye to eye on this one? What are your thoughts on that?
This is an excellent question, really. So no one ever asked me this perspective. So the way I feel is, yes, software craftsmanship can have that effect, depending on your interpretation of craftsmanship, similar to Agile. So, for example, for the people that interpret it, let's say like Agile is equal to Scrum, and only Scrum, that drove developers away. The same can happen with craftsmanship. If you look at craftsmanship and think about in extreme programming and pair programming and TDD and stuff like that, that would drive everyone away. So this leads to a discussion that is a much interesting, very interesting discussion. Is like the difference between a mindset, an ideology, and a methodology. So if you think about Agile, is an ideology. It is about fast feedback loop, collaboration, right? So tighter feedback loops, inspect and adapt. That is the mindset. How you achieve that is through different techniques and methodologies. So Scrum is a methodology, XP is a methodology, right? So, but there is a mindset and methodologies. Mindset is much stronger, is part of the ideology, right? Craftsmanship is the same thing. Craftsmanship is an ideology. It's a mindset. It's the way that you see your career, is to see the importance of software developers and stuff. But of course, that there are practices. If you want to talk about quality, it's similar to a doctor. Well, anyone, like if you want to say that you are good at something, it's great, awesome that you are saying that. But how do you work? What techniques do you use? How do you behave in certain contexts? That's when the methodologies come in. So in my view, if the conversation about software craftsmanship is like, we really want professionalism and we care about business value and business value through technical excellence, right? So we want to do technical excellence in order to enable business value. So that is a nice conversation, and that probably will unite developers to managers and say, look, everything we're doing here on the technical side is to enable your business. But if you're going to be there banging on, I need to do test-driven development, if it's not TDD, is wrong, and that's the only thing you think about, it would drive everyone away. I'm not saying that it's not important, but the TDD is a very important, one of the best practices that I know, but it's one practice out of 13 of one Agile methodology called XP. That is 1 out of 6 or 7. So see what I'm saying? So craftsmanship is much bigger than.
Right. So I think what you're saying is we as developers don't necessarily have to be passionate just about Spring or Golang or microservices, but we also have to be passionate about delivering value or whatever interests the managers, right? Delivering value, delivering high quality software, working collaboratively. And I think that's something else that I wanted to ask as well, that when you talk about it, I think almost every single time we end up talking about career, learning, and it just sounds that it has to do, really, these things cannot be prescribed to developers, right? Go own your career, go start learning. I think it's more about passion, how you internally start thinking about learning new things, new methodologies as well as ideologies. So what do you suggest developers as individuals should do to inculcate this software craftsmanship attitude? And I kind of want to quote your book here as well, Sandro. So, and that was an eye-opener for me. And the book actually said, that if you had 1 year of experience 10 times, you don't have 10 years of experience. You just have 1 year of experience 10 times. So you really have to grow in those 10 years to actually have that experience. So what do you suggest for developers to have that growth mindset, not just in technology, but overall software craftsmanship and the attitude itself?
Yeah, for me, there is a more fundamental thing that each developer should think about. Is first of all, make a distinction between their job and their career. For me, those are separate things. Right, so a job is something that you do and it's part of your career. There are steps on your career, but a career is part of who you are, right? So the first thing for me, before even thinking about learning and developing, is understand that your career is part of who you are. So this division, like my professional life, my personal life, I personally don't like that division. I don't even find it very healthy, because like you cannot split yourself apart. Because when you do that, you are always guilty. If you are spending time with your career, you feel that you are not looking after your family. If you're looking after your family, you are not looking after your career. So you have that division because you are splitting yourself in two. You need to find a way to combine. I'm not talking about time yet. I'm talking about how you see yourself. So this is all me. My family, my profession, my career, this is me as one. How you split. So that's the first thing. Then you need to understand the same aspirations that you have with your family and what the kind of life you would like to have, you should have with your career as well. Which kind of career do you want to have? How do you want to progress? And the answers is different from every person, right? So there's nothing wrong if one wants to become a manager or an architect or a company owner or remain a developer and just write code in something very interesting. It doesn't matter as long as you are happy with that decision. So that is first decision. And you need to keep inspecting that as well, because you change. What I expected from my career 20 years ago, 15 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, and now changed completely. So make that decision first. What do you want for the next few years? With that decided, then we get to learning, then we get to development. So then you start planning, okay, what do I need to learn? Can I combine the job that I have to what I want to be? What you cannot do is CV building. You are not, remember, that is a professionalism side to craftsmanship that should impede you to do something that is not ethical or not good to your employer. You should, when you are being paid to do a job, you should do what is best for the job. Your career is your responsibility. When they are aligned, awesome, phenomenal. But otherwise, your career is your responsibility. Then you need to start balancing the time to learn what you need to learn or find opportunities that you want to find. And by the way, like a lot of, mainly when you are working, well, regardless of the size of the company, like there are a lot of opportunities for you to learn new things. We just don't see it, right? Sometimes we are so narrow. I want to learn Go or Closure, or we are so narrow. Don't focus like I want to learn this language, because this is not your career, right? So you need to think much broader. And when you broaden your horizons of your career, then you start seeing far more opportunities even within the companies that you are currently working for.
I just want
I have a
to
question.
say, you go ahead, Rushali, go ahead.
All right. So a lot of companies also want to help people and their teams to, increase that interest in learning, and they want to support this interest in learning, right? What do you think companies or managers can do to help their team members who might be interested in sort of investing time into their career?
So just before I answer, like we need to distinguish, like I want to make it very clear to everyone in this call. So there is what the companies can do and there is what individuals should do. So for example, I always took ownership of my career, right? So I will not limit my learning to what my company is offering. I want to be very clear in my position that I don't think that is the company's obligation to teach people, right? Because we as individuals, we don't pay training courses to our lawyer, to our dentist, to our hairdresser. Imagine going to your hairdresser and the hairdresser say, hey, can you pay me a training course or buy me a book, right? So they will not do that, and you will not do that to any service that you use or pay for. So there is a professional attitude and say, look, if I want to learn, I should invest my own time and money on that. That is, having said all of that, that is my responsibility to do that. Companies would benefit massively in creating that opportunity for people to learn as well, right? So for me, like we spend a lot of time at work, so it's beneficial for any company for their employees to be as skilled as they can be, because they will be able to provide, to run their business in a much better way. So I think that a company investing, although it's not their obligation, it makes financial sense to actually provide space for people to learn. And the individuals should be thankful for that. So, wow, you know what, besides they pay my salary, and they also create some space for me to learn during working hours, which is great, right? So, but what they can do many different things. And for example, they can create some space for katas, for communities of practice is the most common approach. So they create a community of practices, normally led by the developers. And through the community of practices, they can have many different types of events. Or let's say they can every week or every 2 weeks, they have like 2 hours where they go and practice some kata. So they take a small problem, they all work to solve the problem, and the goal is to actually learn a new technique, right? So being test-driven development or refactoring or learning Spring and whatever else, right? But they can also they can share things with each other. So someone is reading a book or learned a framework, or there's something that they've done in their team. So sharing with the wider population. They can run internal training courses. They can invite speakers from outside to speak to them. Doesn't need to be like those famous speakers. Like sometimes you have people in the local community. For example, in this community here, probably there's a lot of very interesting people. You have 115 people in this call, 111 attendees. There's probably a lot of interesting people in there. Maybe they have an hour at lunchtime that they could share what they do in their company with another company. So those are, and this is very cheap. This doesn't cost anything. Doesn't cost a single penny, right? So let alone everything else that you can put money into it and buy learnably and online courses and so on and so forth. But the ones that I mentioned don't cost us nothing.
Sure. So I just want to add to what you just said. You mentioned katas, and I really want to say that it's amazing how it changes you if you deliberately practice something. So you know how you call it deliberate practice, and I never realized that as a software developer you could be doing coding in and out, but you never change your ways. So you're actually just doing the same old thing over and over again, but you could actually do katas with a goal that this kata is to practice solid design principles. Some of the katas I would usually do just so that I have my hands on the shortcuts. And just wanted to echo that thought. I think it's a very important thing that all the software developers should always do. And doing, I think when there's a lot that can be done. And I heard you, this was something that I was going to ask. When you were talking about career, you're very specific in saying, so that I'm not talking about time, I'm talking about how you see yourself. So I really want you to talk about time as well, right? For developers, this is one of the biggest issues, how time becomes a constraint in so many ways. And what is it that we could do?
So a lot of people ask me these questions. For example, I know that Uncle Bob, a few years ago, he was talking about how much time people should invest in their careers, and he was being a bit more prescriptive. He was talking about 1-2 hours a day or something. I don't remember exactly. He had a number that he was prescribing. I like the sentiment that you should spend time in your career, certainly, but I feel the way you do that doesn't work for everyone. You need to find your own way. I can only talk about myself, right? So what works for me, I cannot do 2 hours a day, or it doesn't work for me. I feel constrained. I feel, I know, I have already a lot of pressure at home and at work. What I don't want is to have that, this is your time to learn. For some people, this work very well. They set in the morning or in the afternoon or lunchtime and stuff. For me, it doesn't. So I go through phases. I go through waves that I call. There are times where things at home are a bit quieter, or at work is a bit quieter, and accelerate my learning. So then I use that space that I have, and then I will be like spending many hours every day. I'm going to bed like midnight and stuff like that. Sometimes I take a whole weekend to do stuff. But then sometimes I go weeks just binge watching Netflix, right? So watching a film because I need to relax as well. So I try not to be too rigid, because for me, like one thing that is the advice I can give is whichever time you decide. So time is the only thing that is really fair in the world. We all have exactly 24 hours a day, right? This is really fair. How we use the time is what differs. And the only advice I can give you is whichever proportion of time that you dedicate to your career, it needs to be a pleasure to do that. This is why I said at the beginning that a career is part of who you are. It's more fundamental. It's not a job. I'm not learning Spring because I need to use, right? So I want to develop as a professional. So that should give me pleasure to do that. So I would not have something that removes the pleasure away from doing that. And also I would not do that in a way that I will feel guilty because I'm not doing something else. The same way that we used, like we stop to watch a film, or I don't know, go to the park or whatever, that is a pleasant thing to do. When you understand that your career is part of who you are, every activity towards that should be a pleasure, and then I never feel guilty that I'm sacrificing one thing over the other.
That really makes a lot of sense, Sandro. And you've talked a lot about personal learning, right? We've talked about the ideology that an individual should have, that maybe a team could have as well. But let's say, these are all people who are working in organizations, and organizations have their own culture, right? If you might believe in software craftsmanship, but your organization might not. So how do you kind of start introducing this culture in an existing organization? And Sapan, I know your company is currently in that process, in that transition phase. So maybe you want to talk a little bit about that, and Sandro, you can pitch in as well.
Sure. So I think one thing that I have understood is that it's tough to teach people culture or attitude. You could uh, be prescriptive in terms of, how Sandro said, technologies which requires a specific focus. Craftsmanship is actually a lot of things, as Sandro already, right? And it intersects with so many things, being agile, having the right practices, uh, and constantly keep learning as well. And I think that's one thing that right away developers like, which is the opportunity of learning. All the developers always are very open to learning new things, new technologies. So I think the first thing that we did was, as a matter of fact, was have trainings done inside our company. We have had Sandro, Adam Thornhill, a lot of other people come in. As a matter of fact, I see there's some participants in the Zoom call itself who spends like hours every week training different people, right? So I think one of the biggest thing that we saw was how you could really put that effort in upskilling people in terms of having the right attitude. And it also goes from a level of abstraction. It's learning and teaching and coaching is one part, but on the other side, you could also have, let's say, things like automation. So just in past few years, we have introduced so much automation that it also, if there are, finally, we are an industry where there are so many anti-patterns, and you only realize it like 10 years down the line when you're looking at your own code and say, oh shoot, I didn't know about solid at that time, most probably, right? So what you do is you start adding this automated harnesses, so to speak, as well, so that people are kind of stopped at the time when they're doing the wrong thing, or if they end up breaking things. So for me, I think, yeah, it's been mainly coaching, teaching, as well as automation in the different aspects of the software development. Though I would like to hear Sandro's thought on the fact we also have a little bit of auditing role in our company, who are auditing different people's work. But I also feel if you have to audit, then most probably it's half the battle is already lost, because that itself. So I would like to hear Sandro's thoughts on this, and how could you, what is it that, what extra or what more could you do to have this attitude inculcated in teams and developers?
Yeah, I'll talk more about the other work I do, like how we drove, for example, technical change at UBS. It's a massive investment bank, right? So, and a few other companies as well. So first of all, you as an individual, so I think the question was more about the individual, like what you as an individual can do to start bringing those things to the organization. So first of all, don't think that will change everyone or the entire company, right? So this mindset will only lead you to be very frustrated and demotivated. So first of all, this is what Sapan said, like you don't go to a person and say, hey, you know what you've been doing for the past 10 years, it's all wrong, it's all shit, and you should do this instead. So if you do that, like this is, like I had a lot of time throughout my career to think about this. If someone came to me today and say, look, everything you do is shit, and now you need to follow these practices in here, you need there is these, and regardless of all the practices, like BCD or whatever, right? So I will reject it straight away. It's like, who the hell are you, right? So why are you saying that to me? So the way that you drive change, first of all, you need to have a lot of energy and really wanting to do that, because it is a tough job. But you can take it easy on yourself. First of all, lower your expectations. But I felt that the one that kept me motivated to do that is, first of all, I had to make sure that whatever I was prescribing, I was good at it. Because how can you go to someone and say, hey, we need to do something very different when you yourself are not very good at it or don't know how to do? It's already difficult to have credibility. So I was spending nights after nights, weeks after weeks, months after months, until I mastered the bloody TDD, right? So until that I could grab the keyboard and say, okay, now I know how to do this. Because when I go and speak to someone and I said, look, there is a better way, and I could show that this is one of the things. Another thing is, like, you don't criticize someone else, because if you criticize your manager or your teammates, this is the wrong approach. You already create fiction. But if you come as a suggestion, another thing, for example, is the size of commitment. You just say, oh, from now on, I think we should change everything. It's true. People have fears. There are unknowns, right? So, but what you can ask is, can we do an experiment? So just for this sprint, just for 2 weeks, can we take this user story and can we try to test drive that? Or in this user story, can we try to use this technique or that technology? Or can we take this stream of work and try in a different way? So if you reduce the size of the commitment to the thing that you want to change, it's much easier for you to start driving small changes. Another thing, your behavior needs to be exemplary, right? You cannot be a person that no one wants to talk to because you are fighting for every semicolon, right? Everything that you find that is wrong, you start shouting about. This will only, the only effect that will cause, people will start sidelining you. They don't want you in meetings anymore. So you need to really decide what is important for you. Focus on that and don't be confrontational. Always ask for small experiments and lead by example. Have an attitude that people, when they look at you and say, oh, I would like to be like this guy. Like, I see what he's saying. But you need to be nice in a way, right? So if you just change, you don't need to change. Another thing is the Pareto's law, right? So you don't need to change 100% of the organization. If you find the right 20%, You might cause an 80% improvement, and that should be good enough, right? So if you're trying to go beyond than that, you will just be frustrated. So be happy with the small increments, and be an example. Be someone that people like to be. Right? That's what would be my advice.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, to work in small increments. And Sandro, I want to take a quick time check. We have about 7 minutes left, and I do want people to kind of get, a short actionable list from you. So, okay, today they've heard about what software craftsmanship means. Okay, we've heard about the values and the ideology. What should we do next? So, do you think? And we've got people with a variety of skill sets here as well. There are people who might be using a lot of the techniques and technical practices recommended. So maybe you can give like a broader set of things that people can take home with them and work on to get better at their craft.
I think that it's difficult to be prescriptive when people are very different, right? So I would not dare to be prescriptive at all. I would probably just re-emphasize what I said before. I think that what is actionable and that can be done at an individual basis is tonight when you go to bed, think about your career. Think about what you've done all those years, where you are. See how happy you are with what you've done, what you know, the kind of work you do. Think about what kind of work you would like to do. If they are aligned, you are a very happy person, keep going as you are. If they are not aligned, then you start thinking on a plan. So how can you align the two, right? So don't blame your companies. I worked for many companies over the years, and I like to think, at least from my perspective, I like to think that all the doors are still open to me. But there was a time that what I wanted for my career, that company could not offer. And that's not because the company is bad or because the manager is this or that. It's because their business model, what they need to achieve as a business, is not necessarily aligned to what I wanted to do. And at that point, I had to make that alignment, right? So, but a lot of the times, even internally with the companies that I worked for, I could reshape my role, my influence, the kind of work that I was doing, so that it would be more aligned to what I wanted to do, and that would also bring more value to the company, right? So, but think about that. So for me, the advice is like, think about where you want to go, and then create a plan to get those skills within the company that you are or outside.
Great.
Sapan, you
I have
want
but I have a very nice question over here that what the participants have asked, and I would also like to know about it, which is, I think the first half of the question is, what can I learn as a new graduate? But also, what mistakes you made early in your career, and if you could learn, and if any learnings that you could share.
This is an interesting one. I think that I don't regret much about my decisions. I think that I made the decisions that I could make given the information I had. But there was one thing that I would probably think differently because of where I was coming from. I always thought that other people were better than me. So I was afraid to say what I think and putting my thoughts forward. And I think that I took too long to make certain decisions. So mainly when you are coming from a country where, as Rushali was saying at the beginning as well, you might be, well, people will not think, when they think about, oh, let's think about great developers and technology, they will not think about Brazil, right? So I think that it took me too long to get that confidence in a way. And as I was meeting people that I actually admired and read their books and I met them in person, so, well, you know what, they are just normal people and stuff. So I would not put people in pedestals. I would just make sure that they are just normal people that I could learn from. I would focus on learning the techniques and not following celebrities. So I think they tend to disappoint us as people. So, but I think that's probably it. But like, just make sure, mainly in the beginning of your career, and this is not a mistake I've made. I think that actually got quite right. At the beginning of our careers, most of us, I'm not saying all, but we have, there's less things that we need to do. For example, family, I did not have kids, I was not married, I could dedicate far more. And I really accelerated the beginning of my career with a lot of dedication, working for different companies, doing different things. So that's the right time for that acceleration.
Yeah, if I could add it, or actually say the same thing that you said a little bit differently, is the speed of making decisions is inversely proportional to how old you are. So I think, I mean, you're going to have a lot more to think about when you are 40 as opposed to when you're 20, right, or 25. And I think, yeah, that I would say that if you want to try a lot of things, do it early on, because with time you're going to have to, I think naturally we are going to have to find certain kind of stability. So thanks for saying that.
Yeah.
And we have another question. Dhara says, that if we do want to invest, but we don't know where to go, right? What can you maybe point out? You mentioned katas earlier when you were talking, Sandro. So katas is a really good way to practice certain skills. So if you want to learn TDD, for example, dive into some katas and do some of those. But Sandro, Sapan, if you guys have any,
So the question was like, if you don't know exactly where you want to go, is that correct? So this is very important. So I mentioned that in one of my talks, the talk that is just about careers, and I was very driven, and I'm a person that I'm constantly thinking where I am and stuff. But that doesn't mean that throughout 25 years, I knew the word like probably twice in my career where I was like, I have no clue what I'm gonna do next. So I don't know what to do. So in those cases, my advice would be open as many doors as possible and create. There is a thing, what's the name of it? It's Del North call it deliberate discovery. Although the context that he describes that is not the same that I'm going to describe here. So in a nutshell, what it means is you don't know what you don't know. So you are a bit lost, you don't know where to go. So what you can try to do is deliberately try to create opportunities so that you might discover that. So how do you do that? Getting involved with communities is a great example. Meeting new people, right? So although you might not know where you want to go, maybe what you need is to cast a wider net, speak to more people, figure out what they are doing, create new friendships, new contacts, because through that, an opportunity or insight might come along. So that's what I've done. I really immersed myself into communities and stuff like that.
Hey, we're up on time, but I do want to kind of steer you to give a few technical tips as well. So if, let's say, they want to learn TDD or learn how to pair better, do you have a few tips that people can take away with them?
Do a lot of katas. Do a lot of katas alone and in pairs through the community, inside your company, every opportunity you have. So as I said, like if you have a complicated personal life, for example, that is not easy to dedicate outside, use your lunchtime, right? So there's no excuse. You don't blame this is what we used to do in an investment bank. All you needed back then was an empty room. Now that you are online, it's even easier, right? Get a person that you like, say, schedule an hour during your lunch, put like bring your lunch to your desk and share the screen and start pairing. Pick whatever example. So do that over and over and over again. And that's what I've done for many, many years until I mastered the techniques that I needed. So, and there's no, again, time will never be an excuse if you can use your lunchtime. Or remote, you can pair with whoever you want, regardless of where they are in the world. Right. So.
Yeah. It reminds me of the movie Pursuit of Happiness. And, it just makes me think right away that everyone wants to see it. No one wants to be it. So I think, and I think that would be a great takeaway for me today, which is things that you like to see, it might as well you try it, because that's when you'll be able to live that journey. Great.
That's a nice way to summarize it, Sapan. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, guys, we're up on time. Sandro, thank you so much for joining us. This was absolutely fantastic, and we really, really appreciate you taking the time. Um, Sapan, thank you for
My
being here as well.
pleasure, and congratulations for creating the new community. All the best with the new community. I hope that it becomes a thriving community, and I would love to see how this community is going in the next few months. So yeah.
Sure.
So we
Thank
want
you.
to share a little survey with everyone before you guys leave. So we will probably post it in the meetup group. So please come back to it and send us your answers in meetup. Thank you everyone for joining.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks for having us.